Hey everyone, welcome back to the video, and this one is gonna be what if Mongolia forms an empire. So Mongolia already formed an empire which is stretched from this island in China all the way to Crimea and Ukraine. So what if Mongolia decides to form another one? So the first thing Mongolia is gonna do is to try to present the idea to Central Asia for where they could become allies with Mongolia, since they are surrounded by China and Russia. So they present the idea to Central Asia. So Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan accept the idea, but the only ones that didn't accept it is Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. So Mongolia threatens them to join the alliance or they would be invaded. So Tajikistan is gonna be joining the alliance, but Turkmenistan still refuses. So that means they declare war on Turkmenistan. So already overwhelmed by the amount of army these countries have, they already storm in. And then by already, they already lost our coast, and then soon Turkmenistan surrenders. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, so there's a new border dispute going on in Central Asia. So with Uzbekistan claiming this area, and then Kyrgyzstan claiming this part, and Tajikistan claiming this part. So what Mongolia decides to do is to ask Uzbekistan that if they want to annex their claim, they would have to give some territory over to Kyrgyzstan, which was this area part, and Tajikistan has to give up this area over to Kyrgyzstan. And then for Tajikistan to get their claims, they would have to give up, Uzbekistan will have to give up some territory over to Kyrgyzstan, this part. So let's see what Mongolia's proposal looks like within an action. Okay, so this is what Mongolia has proposed, and that them three countries already agreed. So Uzbekistan is no longer landlocked, and Tajikistan decided to go a little bit more farther into their claims, and then Kyrgyzstan has taken some land from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. It might have not been much, but it's still some land. So with them already allies, oh, and also Kazakhstan got a little bit of territory over here in capturing this lake from Turkmenistan. So with the alliance already growing, they decided to go to the South Asia, and then they asked South Korea and Japan and Taiwan to join the alliance. So Taiwan agrees, South Korea also agrees, and then Japan is deciding if they should not join or to join. So they decided to postpone the date on their decision. So with this, they are starting to get their armies fully mobilized, and then with this, they declare war on China. But because of this, North Korea sees this and declares war on them. So over here, South Korea makes the first move and starts on a. So South Korea starts an opening on a full-scale invasion into North Korea, capturing Pyongyang, and then going up very slowly, but still soon stalemated. And then over here, in Central Asia, since since there's barely anybody in this part of China, they all have an advantage advancing into this, and with the Tibet people wanting to be free from China, they help them advance. And then eventually Mongolia starts an invasion into Manchuria. And then soon Manchuria falls. And so does North Korea. And then eventually Taiwan begins a big invasion. And then capturing a lot of territory. Soon connecting up with the front. Capturing Beijing. And then China falls. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with China and North Korea. So it looks like that Mongolia got less land than they were expecting, since Taiwan annexes the southern part of China, while Tajikistan annexed Tibet. Kyrgyzstan annexed a little bit of Xinjiang, and Kazakhstan also with Xinjiang, and then the South Korea annexes North Korea, uniting into a democratic rule, while also annexing a little bit of Manchuria, while Mongolia got that much land. So they go over to South Korea, and they decide to break the alliance with the Koreans. So they go over to Korea and say that they need to annex them or they would be going to war. So the Koreans at first decided to deny this request. So the Mongolians declare war on them. And with the Mongolians already entering Korean at full speed, soon Korea gives in and surrenders. So let's look at the peace treaty. Here's the peace treaty, and we see full annexation of South Korea. So because of this, the rest of the alliance members sees this in shock, which makes Uzbekistan decide to leave the alliance, since it's also not near the Mongolians, so they wouldn't have to be fearing to invade them. But the only thing that could invade them is Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Kyrgyzstan. So with Uzbekistan leaving the alliance, they decided to search for more allies. So they decided to go over to Japan, and since they were about to join, but since they saw the full annexation of Korea, they decided to postpone their date again. So they decided to look up, since that's their only direction. They could go over to Japan, but they could become potential allies. So they decide to declare war on Russia. And with the Central Asia, Mongolia, and Taiwan helping, and the manpower of the Koreas, they start a full invasion into Russia, which starts out very well since barely anybody is in Siberia. But they do start to slow down because of the Russian winter. And over here, Ukraine decides to join on the aid of the Mongolians as an ally. So with the Russians backing out of Ukraine starts an offensive alongside with Kazakhstan, eventually linking up and taking over the valuable part of Russia and taking over St. Petersburg, and then start moving on all sides. And then as the Russian troops start going to this part of the Mongolian territory, first they push back very well, and then going down to the closer to the Korean peninsula, they push back the Mongolians by a lot and start an invasion into Manchuria. But soon that's stalemated, and then eventually pushed out. And then they were back where they started. with some encirclements happening, and that made the Russians very weak, eventually connecting up with the Kazakhstani army. And then with a one big front, they decided to go for an invasion into Moscow. So with the Kazakhstani troops moving over with the Ukrainians, they eventually take out Moscow. And with a little bit more land, the Russians surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with Russia. So with Mongolia taking over a lot of Siberia, and also Ukraine taking the valuable area in Russia, also as Kazakhstan. So Mongolia decides they want to expand more. So they go over to Japan and they demand full annexation of Japan. But Japan decides to refuse the annexation and want to become an ally. But the Mongolians say that it was too late for that, and they already demand full annexation, or they will be invading them. So as the Japanese doesn't have that much power against the Mongolians, they decided to become Mongolian. So with the Japanese surrendering over to the Mongolians, they also look down south, and they also demand Taiwan to join them. So as the Taiwan just getting their stuff ready, becoming more economic, more powerful, or military powerful, they reluctantly joined the Mongolians. So seeing this, the alliance members realized that the Mongolians could invade them at any time. So they decided to leave the alliance altogether, especially Kazakhstan, which was extremely loyal to the Mongolians. But they decided to leave the alliance since they could invade them at any time. So because of this, they decided to invade Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. So with this, the Mongolians took a while to get to the borders of them, but then eventually they start invading. And then soon they take over Tajikistan claims in China. And then soon they go over to their mainland, taking them over. So it's Kyrgyzstan, and then soon they both fall. And then they realize that since they're there, they could just go over to Uzbekistan, and then they invade. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with them three, and we see full annexation into them. So here's Mongolia now. They are deciding to stop expanding, but they decided that they just want to get rid of their alliance members. So they also declare war on Kazakhstan. So with the Mongolian troops already at their border, they start invading the rest of Turkmenistan right here, and then they start invading in all sides, and then eventually going into the Russian claim of Kazakhstan, or what Kazakhstan's claims in Russia, and then eventually they're pushed back a lot, and then soon they surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with Kazakhstan, and they realize that they have almost full control over the Caspian Sea. So they go over to Iran and the Caucasus, and then they send them an ultimatum. And then they want this part of Iran, and they wanted to annex all of Azerbaijan and all of Armenia, while leaving Georgia just with this much area. So with them three fearing that they could be invaded either way, they decide to go with a peaceful invasion and accept the ultimatum. So with this, they decided to give up what they claim, and then soon they're annexed. And then with Georgia automatically in bad state, they go over to Ukraine and decide to ask them if they could annex them. So that's what Ukraine does. They annex the rest of Georgia. And then the Mongolians officially control the rest of the Caspian Sea. So with the Mongolians having a lot of land, they decide to stop here and conclude their empire. So hopefully y'all liked the video, and I'll see you on the next one.